Coming to this next iteration of the Enlightening lunch. Today, I imagine many of you already know Luke Tate because he is, in addition to his role in the President's Office, on the faculty of the School for the Future of Innovation Society as Professor of Practice. I will tell you, and Luke knows this, and I don't think I'm sharing anything terrible. It was a challenge to get Luke into the university with that title as Professor of Practice. Basically because he is an incredible overachiever. And when he came looking around at ASU, Luke has a deep family background and community background in Phoenix. He was coming out of the Obama White House, where he was, at that time, if I remember properly, the youngest special assistant to the president.
Either the youngest or second youngest.
Second youngest. So
in the policy arena, yeah.
The special assistants to the president, if you sort of don't know that nomenclature, this is what sort of the most senior policies-focused people have. That's the title that they have. And these people are often, if they come in and out of the academic world, they are full professors, they're deans. The president's science advisor has the title special assistant. And you know it's important because that actually got fought over whether it was going to be assistant to the president or special assistant to the president. So Luke was coming out as special assistant to the president, and we had to convince the central administration that just because he was of a certain age and a certain years past his
I am of a certain age.
He deserved a professor of practice title, which is conceived of as a senior title at the university. We don't have assistant professors of practice or associate professors of practice. We just have professors of practice. But we won that battle, and Luke is here, and he spends most of his time in the president's office, a little bit of time with us teaching a class on equity and technology, equity and innovation, so in that class, he is now the director of a new Office of Applied Innovation running out of the President's Office, and that's what he's here to talk about today. Luke.
Great, thank you, Dave, and thank you for the very generous introduction. And it's awesome to see so many familiar faces, folks I've loved working with, and great to meet many of you for the first time. So really looking forward to getting to know you. In order to talk about the work that we're doing now in our new office, I am going to sort of start at the beginning because this has really been an outgrowth of the work we've been building for the last few years. So just by way of introduction, I grew up here, as Dave mentioned. I grew up in Central Phoenix. For those of you who know the city, I grew up at around 15th Avenue and Indian School. And when I grew up there, if you know that area, in the 80s and 90s, it was a pretty rough place. Most of my classmates did not have very good default trajectories in life. We had to navigate a lot of violence in our community. I remember, when we'd hear gunshots at night, I'd run around the house and check every lock and window, and it didn't happen all that often, but I don't hear gunshots at night anymore where I live. So the result of growing up in a place like that, as I said, is that I could see most of my peers, a lot of them were starting families before they were ready. They got caught up in gang stuff. And I didn't experience any of that for a number of reasons, right? I had both my folks watching over me. They were teachers. And so we'd go down to the Yucca Branch Library on 15th Avenue, and we'd check out 35 books every weekend. And then come back the next weekend and check out 35 more, because that's the most you were allowed to check out. And so that was my childhood. And certainly didn't hurt growing up a straight white guy in Phoenix in the 80s and 90s. As a result of all of those factors, I was sort of buffered from a lot of the environment around me, and ended up having every opportunity I could possibly want. In high school, I was going back and teaching in my old schools. I taught summer school, the computer class, and I could see that the factors that were preventing these kids from fulfilling their potential were malleable. Right, these were the result of a series of decisions that we had made as a polity. They were the result of policy decisions. They were the result of decisions that determined whether their folks had access to work or didn't, or had to work 2 jobs to pay the rent. And so my view was, we can make different decisions. So I want to be a part of that. And growing up out here, I didn't really know, how the policy world worked. I just had this sort of like really naive notion that, well, that's like what people back on the East Coast do. Like people at Harvard go do that, so I'll go to Harvard. So I went to Harvard. And it was a cultural shock for me growing up here and then standing in the line at freshman registration with the rowing coaches, the crew coaches, walking down the line and saying, well, you've got long arms, you want to come row. And so I ended up in a boat. And I ended up in a boat with a kid from Andover, and a kid from Exeter, and a kid from Choate Rosemary Hall, and a kid from St. Paul's, and a kid from, there were six total from boarding schools. These were East Coast boarding schools that I didn't even know existed until I went back there. And then there was one kid who was from a public school in Cincinnati, and I thought that was really cool, like another kid from public school. It was really difficult for me to adjust to life there, to a very different set of social expectations. The fact that most of my peers seem to be approaching this college experience as an exercise in how to get ahead, how to get themselves ahead. And that was really foreign to me as like a way to live your life. Despite always being sort of competitive and ambitious, it was just like, what kind of ethic is this? And so I sort of fought through it, and it ended up being really important. And the reason I mention it, for those of you who may not have had to be in those environments yet, or who are about to be, it was a really healthy, though it wasn't fun, it was a really healthy adjustment to make of, all right, how do I navigate that terrain? Terrain that I don't think ought to look the way it looks, but nevertheless needs to be navigated. And that was really important in then being able to do anything in the career that I ended up choosing in DC. So while I was in school, a mentor of mine is a guy named Bob Putnam, a social capital hero leader, and he was running a seminar called the Saguaro Seminar on Social Capital. And there was a state senator from Illinois, Barack Obama, who was a part of it. And I actually didn't meet him during this period of time, but I was reading what he was writing about neighborhoods like mine, like the one I'd grown up in, and neighborhoods with challenges that are a lot worse, frankly. And to me, it just was clear that he had the best insight that I'd ever seen, certainly from any politician, of how the challenges in communities like mine are interwoven, right? The fact that if you want the schools, if you want your educational reforms to take hold in the schools, you've got to acknowledge that kids who are navigating violence between their door and the school door aren't going to have their head in the game in the classroom, right? And as we've talked about in my seminar, we actually now have great evidence behind that. The effects of allostatic load, what happens when cortisol and adrenaline are dumping through your blood every single day. The fact that metaphorically it works like scarring in the brain. Functionally, what happens is that toxic stress makes it harder for neural connections to form, right? That's what we call learning. So the idea that violence and housing unaffordability and educational failures are all interwoven and must be addressed collectively. This was an idea that I had not heard articulated by a politician, certainly with not the nuance and understanding of those dynamics that I had seen from him. So I wanted to go work for him. I wanted to be president, and I wanted to go work for him. And so he was president, and then I went to go do the job that I wanted to do, which was running his economic mobility team on the Domestic Policy Council, where we had under our sort of charge everything having to do with poverty, homelessness, urban policy, long-term disaster recovery, open data and technology. It ended up being a pretty broad set of activities that we were running. But in doing that, there was sort of the traditional work, the work that people in that type of role had done for decades. So I led the policy process to reform TANF, which is our welfare system. Our proposal, it won't surprise you, was dead on arrival on the Hill. But nevertheless, we had a proposal. We had a proposal to end homelessness for all families with kids. So one of the things that I'm most grateful to have been a part of in the Obama administration was we had an effort working to end veteran, chronic, and family homelessness. In 5 years from setting that goal, we had cut veteran homelessness in half nationwide. Family and chronic homelessness had fallen by 20%, and because we had identified the tools that worked, I said, great, now we know how to do it. with permanent supportive housing, with rapid rehousing, right? Instead of putting people in shelters and letting them languish, actually getting them back into an apartment with first month's rent, last month's rent, a security deposit, utility arrears, and then helping pay the bills for a month or two, right? When you do that, it costs $6,000 to $9,000 a year. Leaving someone in a shelter all year costs $22,000. If you do rapid rehousing, 90% of them are still housed at the end of the year. So it's more effective, it's better outcomes for families. This is just one sort of narrow example, but I want you to hear it because that insight led us to say, okay, well, what if we just did that for every family with kids experiencing homelessness nationwide? Like, are we not a rich enough country that every kid ought to have a home? And we thought we were. So the team got together, we said, all right, what would it cost? How many families are there with kids who are experiencing homelessness? How many more are going to fall into homelessness in any given year? What would it cost to just say, this is the United States of America, no kid is gonna go homeless here? And we got an answer. It was $11 billion over 10 years. But to put that in context, we spend more than $100 billion every single year subsidizing home ownership for middle and upper middle income people. We spend more than $100 billion every single year. And I was asking for 11 over 10. We put together the proposal, we sent it over to Congress in our final budget. Anyone want to guess what happened to it? It was dead on arrival on the Hill. So we couldn't just go about the work in the traditional way, in the way that all of the people who had had my type of job previously had done it. So I've got my notes here, sorry. So what we began to do was say, all right, what are other ways of achieving the goals that we came here with if the legislative process is not available to us? Of course, there were executive orders. Of course, there were presidential memoranda. Those only go so far. We had to find partners who could help us get the work done. So I'll give you a couple of just illustrative examples because what it led to was a way of working that we've now brought here to ASU and that our team is trying to pursue new projects with here. So I'm going to tell the diaper story. A couple of you have heard this. So this is a rather idiosyncratic example. You're a special assistant to the president for economic mobility. You're sort of working the poverty desk at the White House. So a lot of really sad things come across your desk. One thing that came across my desk that I was really surprised by was I saw that low-income families are paying, on average, $936 a year for diapers if they've got an infant or toddler. At the time, my daughter was like 18 months old, and I thought, $936 a year, that's insane. I'm paying half that, right? Because I have Amazon Subscribe and Save coming direct to my door, right? I had enough money to sign up for Prime to begin with, so that's possible. I had the capital, right? The four things that you need for that technology to work, for e-commerce to work for you. You gotta have access to capital, sufficient capital to buy the membership to begin with. You gotta have access to credit. You have to have broadband to actually place the order. And you have to be able to receive packages at your home, which for many low-income families, that's like a fantasy. There's no way that's gonna happen. So what do people do? Well, they turn to whatever solution is available to them. They walk down to the Walgreens, right, or 7-Eleven. And they end up paying, on average, 50 cents a diaper. And that adds up to $936 a month on diapers alone. And so we began to ask, well, what are the effects of that, right? This inequality in access to this technology, what happens as a result? What we found out was that the bottom quintile, bottom 20% of families with children and infants and toddlers were paying 14% of their after-tax income on diapers alone. So of all the families with infants and toddlers, the bottom 20% were paying 14% before you get to rent, before you get to food, before you get to heat. And so we said, okay, what happens as a result of that financial burden? What we saw, much higher rates of UTIs, because kids are being left in diapers longer than they ought to be. Much higher rates of kidney infections, much higher rates of skin diseases, and sadly much higher rates of child abuse, because as those of you who have raised babies know, when you leave them in a dirty diaper, they cry and sometimes get hit. So we've now got a public health crisis on top of a financial crisis happening because there's an inequality in access to a basic technology, e-commerce, right? Now, how we went about solving the problem was about building partnerships. So we went out and we said, okay, who has access to these sort of consumer-facing platforms? How can they help low-income families across the country pay less, pay what I'm paying, right? We found one such company, Jet.com. Jet said, we'll work with you. Jet said, we'll sell at cost, right? We're not going to take a hit, but we'll sell at cost for us. We went to the best supplier they had of low cost but high quality diapers, the same supplier that goes to a lot of hospitals, domestic violence shelters. And we said, okay, what can we do to work with you to reduce the cost even further? Can we cram more diapers in a box? Yes. Can we take the color off the packaging? Yes. Can we do anything else without reducing the quality? No. Okay, well then we'll stop. And we got it down to 13 cents a diaper. So at the 7-Eleven, it's 50. On average, people pay 34. On Amazon, I was paying like 15. We got down to 13. And we said, how do we get this essential product? You can't go without it. If you raise babies, if you've babysat, you know you can't go without it. How do we get this essential product in the hands of families who need it? And we aren't going to be able to solve. We must solve, collectively, we must solve the barriers that prevent low-income people from accessing e-commerce, access to credit, access to capital, ability to receive packages at home, broadband internet. But we weren't going to wait to solve all of those. What we did is we asked Chet, okay, we know that these families are in touch with nonprofits in their community every week, if not every day. What if you just make these available at cost to every nonprofit nationwide, every single nonprofit, no matter what they do, everyone with a nonprofit tax ID, so long as they either pass them along to the families for free or sell them at cost. Jet said we can do that. So we've got a partner, we've got a technology that has in general been used for profit maximization, was used to form the basis of the richest person on the planet's wealth. And we put that technology in service of solving a public problem, a social problem. Within a year, something like 15 million had been shipped. So that technology is still available. That deal is actually still available. If any of you are on the board of a nonprofit or volunteer at a nonprofit, anyone who is at any sort of nonprofit in touch with low-income families, this is still available. It was just sort of one example of, all right, well, what are these technologies that are out there that we can put toward other uses? The other thing we did that I think really sort of set me on this path was we were looking at all this data that we had collected across the federal government on those factors that I was talking about earlier about what's going on in your neighborhood, right? Access to parks, quality of schools, violence. What's the access to opportunity in your geography? Raj Chetty has been doing, his team have been doing the best work, I think, in really digging in at a granular level to how these factors affect the trajectory of people across the country, where they grow up, not just who their parents are, not just what their family's like. And we took all of the data that the federal government had on access to opportunity. We went to HUD, we went to Commerce, we went to Education, we went to DOJ, we went to DOL, and we took all of that data and we pulled it together in a curated set of APIs that were easy to access, easy to query, and we said, all right, what if we took all this data and used it to expand opportunity? What if we went out to organizers all across the country, social leaders all across the country and said, help us understand what understanding of your community would allow you to do something that would expand access to opportunity. We then connected them with, well, we launched the project. We called it the Opportunity Project, and we invited in coding boot camps, universities, big companies, Zillow, Airbnb, a lot of these, Fitbit, they all joined this Opportunity Project. And we said, we have made this data easy to understand, easy to access. It is an open data revolution. Can you work with these community leaders to figure out how you can help solve problems in their community? First round had over 20 solutions, 20 apps, 20 tools that were actually then being used in response to the challenges that the community raised. This lives on. If you go to opportunity.census.gov, for those of you who are on your computers, you can access it right now, opportunity.census.gov. It continues to work both in the federal government and outside to ensure that the entirety of the federal government's open data on access to opportunity, the geography of opportunity in our communities, is available to you and to anyone who wants to use it to solve problems. So as the administration was closing, the question was, all right, how do we take this way of working, This way of identifying an emerging scientific or technological innovation that in the first instance is almost always put toward profit maximizing ends. And how do we ask, can we use it to solve public problems? Can we use it to expand access to opportunity? Can we use it to make this a better place? And that's what I came here to do. Dr. Crow offered me a role pursuing that work. That role has expanded over time, and as Dave noted, earlier this year, we launched an office dedicated to that goal. The mandate that I've been given, that our team has been given, is to identify emerging scientific, technological, design, and policy innovations, and use them for two purposes. Number one, to advance ASU's core teaching and learning mission, right? The reason we are all here. And number two, to expand access to opportunity, economic and educational, throughout our community, anywhere we can work. And so that is the work that we're undertaking. I'll give you just a quick summary of a few of the projects that we're working on as sort of an illustrative glimpse into, well, what do I actually mean when I say that? I do have a question though, because I know we're being recorded. Is it possible to pause the recording? And that's when I said I quit. I won't do it. Ethically it's wrong, morally it's wrong, and I never wanted to be a billionaire to begin with. So I'm glad I got that off my chest, thanks guys. So a couple other examples. One of the ideas that I've been trying to pursue and build here is an idea we're calling universal learning. So this comes in part from my experience working with a lot of folks in Silicon Valley who see the effects that they are already having on the workforce and are afraid of the effects they will have as more and more jobs get automated, as AI becomes more and more sophisticated. And a lot of people are saying, oh, AI is not replacing jobs yet. That's not in the economic data. But automation sure as heck is. If you look at Darren Asimoglu's writing on robotics, we're already losing more jobs to automation over the past decade and a half. Catherine Abraham and Melissa Kearney have the best sort of compendium, their analysis of this, than anything but the flattened barriers to trade worldwide. So they're seeing this and they're saying, well, we need a solution. $1,000 a month, we're gonna send you a check, UBI, and then everyone will be okay. They're gonna say that to the truck driver who's 54 years old and just lost a $60,000 a year job. Here's $1,000 a month. We don't need you in the economy anymore. Thanks, you'll be okay. It's insulting. It fails to understand the self-worth that people derive from their work. And it doesn't address the core challenge, which is how do we continue to equip people with the skills and the knowledge that they need to thrive. So my counter-argument, my riposte to universal basic income is universal learning. That we, collectively, need to make it possible for anyone at any stage of their life or work to acquire the skills and the knowledge that they need to thrive. And that means universities like ASU, who have already been innovative in the spaces that we've been operating in, need to operate in those spaces too. Need to serve non-BA learners. Need to serve later life learners. Need to serve learners in more adaptable, more personalized ways. So one example of a project that my team is pursuing to actually make that possible. This is, again, leveraging the power of big data and artificial intelligence. We are working with a labor data firm right now to build a tool that would allow someone mid-career to upload their resume, their educational history, that would provide them with an array of skills that they can choose from associated with that resume and educational history, that they say, yes, I've got that skill, yes, I have that bit of knowledge, yes, this one, not that one. And that would then say, here are jobs in your area that you are 80 or 90% qualified for. Higher career pathways that maybe you didn't know existed, but based on the skills that you have, you're 80% qualified for this. And here's the delta. Here are the skills you don't have. And here are the ASU courses, or classes, or programs, or courses and classes outside of ASU, where you can actually gain those skills. Because the two biggest barriers that I've seen to serving mid-career learners are, number one, they are highly skeptical that what we have to offer is of any value to them. Many of them have been burned. They've been burned by for-profits. They've been burned by earlier iterations of ASU that didn't care as much about the students, that didn't focus on student success. They've been burned and they're skeptical that what we have to offer will actually help them advance. And then secondly, to be honest, Most folks, not everyone, but most folks don't know the first thing about what they could learn to build on what they already know that would unlock what new pathway for them. So to be able to actually show them that, to be able to say, here are 5 different career pathways, actual currently available jobs, not speculative like industries, currently available jobs in your metropolitan area that you're 80% qualified for. Here's the delta, here's how you can close it. You can call the hiring manager, say, here's my experience, here's what I've done. If I also had X, Y, and Z, would I be competitive for this job? You can get a direct answer, right? So that you actually know that this educational offering, first of all, you've identified what offerings would actually be of value to you. And secondly, you know they'll actually help you advance. So we're working right now to build that tool. It doesn't currently exist. We're half to 2/3 of the way there. I'll give you another quick couple of examples and then turn to questions. All right, Dave? Great. Really excited about the work of the Decision Center for Educational Excellence. Again, leveraging the big data analytical capacity that we have here. We now have groundbreaking access. For those of you who haven't heard of this center, it's actually located here in this building up on the 3rd floor. We have access now to every single educational outcome for every K-12 Arizona student over a period of multiple years, and every single teacher. We know what class they took, we know how they did, we know if they passed it or not, right? We can look at every single teacher. The students have, say, schools where there are 2 math teachers, the students who have flowed through one as opposed to the other for calculus. How did they then do? Did they move on to college or not? We actually have access to that now too. What were the outcomes for the students? So we're beginning to ask questions. We're beginning to dig into that data. One of the findings, that, for example, that we recently identified was that there are thousands and thousands of Arizonan high schoolers who in 7th or 8th grade scored highly proficient on their math exam, who then never took a single advanced math course in their entire high school career. It will not surprise you to learn that that is far more common among low-income kids who score highly proficient in 7th or 8th grade, and Latino students who score highly proficient in 7th and 8th grade, who for reasons of implicit bias, for reasons of access, for many reasons, just never had a single advanced math course. It also won't surprise you that of the kids who scored highly proficient in 7th and 8th grade, those who took advanced math courses were far more likely to move on to college. And of those who didn't, hardly anybody moved on to college. They had the talent, they had the wherewithal, the system did not work for them, it failed them. We're looking at the trajectory of every single kid who scored proficient early on, showing college potential. Did they take the required ABOR courses? Because if they didn't, by senior year, they're not eligible for admission to NAU, ASU, or U of A, except with certain waivers. We're now in the process of identifying the patterns and trajectories in there. Where are the students who fall off? When do they fall off? And can we affirmatively reach out, or can ADE or ABOR affirmatively reach out to students and schools with those profiles and say, hey, you're on the path. You've shown that you have potential. Just make sure you take X, Y, and Z course, and you're coming to ASU, or U of A, if you decide so. Really excited about the potential of this center. We've been given 2 mandates. Number 1, improve the overall educational attainment in Arizona. Number 2, reduce the inequities in a system that does not serve equally our Latino students, our Native American students, our Black students, students with disabilities, students in rural schools. It is not an equal system. Last 2 things I'll quickly mention. One, as another expression of how can technology be part of the public good. I was part of a small team that helped to craft a new public interest technology effort emanating out of Ford, New America, and Hewlett. There was then a university network of that was created that Dr. Crow and Dr. Searle asked Dave to lead. So Dave's leading for ASU's participation in that network. My team hopes to be of service and helpful as we ramp up to the November meeting of that network here at ASU. We're very excited about that. And lastly, as I formed this office, Mike gave me one more mandate. He said, I want you to create a student design studio so that in addition to the work that you're pursuing, you're gonna have, we want students all across this university to be able to pursue their ideas, learning from, working with, leveraging the power of your team. So we are right now in the process. Applications actually just closed for the first round, but there will be more. of building a student team who will be tasked in part with working with us and in part with designing and leading their own projects to leverage emerging scientific and technological innovations in service of expanding access to opportunity. As I said, we are hiring our first round right now. We will also have over the summer a number of graduate and undergraduate stipends available for people to pursue their ideas and to work with our team. And we will grow that student design studio over time. We'd of course be very interested in SFIS students who have embraced the idea that the future is for everyone being part of that work. So I will stop there, but I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here with you all. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for engaging with the conversation, and I'm happy to answer any questions if helpful. Mary Jane.
So can we talk a little bit more about what ASU is doing to address that? You talked about kind of the structural inequities that allows some kids to come to ASU.
Yep. So one of the analyses we did was to look at every single high school across the state, and we saw that on the order of 170 high schools offer not a single AP class and not a single calculus class. Now, to be fair, many of those schools are alternative schools who are serving students who often are not in the position to be taking those classes yet. But if you look just at the 81 schools that are not alternative schools, mostly small, mostly rural, that don't serve a single AP, don't offer a single AP course, don't offer a single calculus course, students in those schools aren't going on to college, right? They don't have access to the college preparatory material that they need. And so one of the things that Mike has directed our team to do is, well, identify the resources then. Like who at ASU can help them? One of the resources we've identified is ASU Prep Digital, which is our online high school. If you've got a school where in any given year 4 kids or 5 kids would be eligible to take calculus, that school's not hiring a calculus teacher. Like they can't afford it. But we can come in and we can say, well, we'll offer calculus to you directly, and we'll do it at a cut rate. The way that Prep Digital does it when they're working with Arizona schools is that they take a much lower rate than they would be eligible for if directly teaching that student. So that's part of how. Part of how is identifying in a granular way, where is the problem, who is not being served well, and what ASU resources are available to help them thrive. By no means have we gotten to the solution for the whole set of students that we've identified. We've literally just gotten started, but I'm really hopeful, based on the examples that we've already seen, that it's possible. Other questions? Sir.
Yes, I have a question regarding...
And could you introduce yourself, please?
Octavio. I'm an SFIS student.
Great.
I have a question regarding... I was thinking if that would be also the case for about 25% of the people who earn there less than 20K per year. And if that would be also insulting or bad for them. And like an alternative that you mentioned is more or less offering skills building, education, but for a lot of these people, it is maybe hard to find the time between their 3 shifts and 50, 60 hours per work per week.
Yep. So here's my view on that. $1,000 a month check is not a replacement for a middle class job. If you have a middle class job and lose it, it is, I think, incumbent upon the government and our educational providers to be able to get you the skills and knowledge that you need to thrive. The solutions that we need for deep poverty, I think, are very different. I don't think, if you look at the total cost of UBI on a cost-benefit basis, an extra $1,000 going into my pocket every month and my wife's pocket every month, I don't think that's a good way for the United States government to be addressing the challenge that you've identified, which is the challenge of deep poverty. We've actually seen a huge increase in deep poverty since AFDC in 1996, Aid to Families with Dependent Children, was turned into TANF. Temporary assistance for needy families. It was a predictable result of cash aid being taken away from families who desperately needed it. We have actually spent more and more over that same period of time in helping low-income families in terms of overall dollars. And is families who are working being better off than they were a few years ago because the earned income tax credit has raised their overall income over that period of time. Whereas folks who are falling in and out of work at the bottom of the wage scale are much worse off, and their ranks are growing. Kathy Eden and Luke Schaefer have done the best work on this. They were the authors of $2 a day, documenting the hundreds of thousands of American families living on less than $2 a day in cash income. Some receiving, but not everyone. Folks being put in this position of having to choose between selling SNAP benefits, which is illegal and carries extraordinarily harsh and punitive penalties, and simply having enough months to make it through enough money to make it through the month to pay the rent or to buy your kid a backpack. Those are the choices that we're forcing families into, and it's a result of bad public policy. The proposal that we put forward to make the biggest set of changes to TANF since it was created in the AFDC, and when I say we, I was shorthanding. The proposal the Obama administration put forward, I was a part of that proposal. I did not agree with all of it. I did not create all of it. I was the lead for putting the sort of policy process together. That proposal would have invested another $8 billion in TANF aid over 5 years. It would have created a new multi-billion-dollar emergency aid and service connection grant, because so often the problem isn't that you don't have enough money over time, it's that you don't have enough money when a crisis strikes, right? Your car breaks down, and it's gonna be a $400 bill, and you can't afford to get it fixed, but that means you can't get to work, or you're relying on rides, and then because you can't get a ride one particular day, you get laid off, and then suddenly you're in exactly the situation that you were identifying, where you're not getting the earned income tax credit because you're not working, because you just lost your job. So the idea was, because so many of the cases of folks living in $2 a day poverty, which is, by the way, the international standard for poverty, the idea that hundreds of thousands of Americans are enduring life at $2 a day or less of cash income is criminal to me. It is certainly unjust. But if you can catch someone right at that moment where they've lost a job and they're gonna lose their house because of it, or their car breaks down and they're gonna lose their job because of it, the proposal was that you'd have grants available next day for any family that walks through the doors with a challenge like that. That proposal was dead on arrival on the Hill. The other notable change that we would have made, states are allowed to use their TANF funding for other purposes outside of the core purposes. The core purposes are providing money to low-income families, helping them get jobs, and covering childcare so that they can work those jobs. Those are the core purposes. Many states spend very little of their TANF money on the core purposes. At least as of a couple years ago, I haven't seen, I'm not a policymaker anymore, so I haven't seen the most recent data in the last year or two. As of a couple years ago, the state who was 50th in the nation in percentage of their TANF funding that went to core purposes, actually providing direct aid to families, helping them get jobs, providing them childcare, was Arizona. Arizona was dead last on that list. So we would have required that at least 55% of the overall TANF funding go to that. Many states were spending, I think, less than 25. At least 55 go to the core purposes, ratcheting up to 60 over time with the idea that if we could get that passed, then you could continue to ratchet it up and ratchet it up, but dead on arrival on the Hill. So I will stop there, but I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here with you all. Thank you for inviting me.